Okay. All right. Melissa, did you want to start off? Were we going to?
Yes. Okay. Yep. Welcome and pledge. Yep. Okay. Are we streaming?
We are. We're good.
Okay. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to this board meeting of the Salt Lake City School District Board of Education. It's August 11th at 6:30. We're sorry we're a couple of minutes late, but we're really happy to be here, and we'd like to welcome everybody who's here to join us, who's either participating on YouTube or here on the meeting. We have a lot to learn tonight and a lot to listen to, and we're really grateful to the many people who are here to support that. I'd like to start by welcoming the board members. We've got Michelle Tuitupo, who's representing Precinct 1, Mike Nemelka, representing Precinct 2, Catherine Kennedy, representing Precinct 3, Nate Salazar, who's Board Vice President, representing Precinct 4, Sam Hansen, representing Precinct 5, myself, Melissa Ford, representing Precinct 6, and Christy Sweat, representing Precinct 7, and Arundhati Uman, who is our student board member, who does a really good job of representing all of us and our students, and she attends West High School. Welcome to the board. And then I'd also like to welcome participating remotely our association reps, Dallin Miller, who represents SLASA, James Tobler representing SLEA, Eric Adams representing Buildings and Grounds, Ben Rowley, who represents Transportation, B. Alonzo representing Nutrition, and Cindy Mills, who's here, participates in board meetings representing SLEOPA. So welcome, and we're thankful to all of you for your engagement. I'd like to have you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance before we start our meeting. So please rise and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And as we know, we're here tonight in a town hall, sort of virtual town hall forum, to answer questions that were received over the last week by many of our community members. We received close to 1,000 questions, if I'm correct in that, Superintendent, and we're attempting to address many of them tonight. This will be a good opportunity for us to listen as a board and hear what these answers are. I'm also sure for you community members and board members that this will generate questions. And for that, we have that link that has that will remain live for you to continue asking your questions. I really firmly believe, and I know the superintendent does as well, that as we ask questions, we provide greater clarity. It helps us as it helps you, helps us work together. It's your children that we are really striving to do our best to serve. And we have lots of good people here tonight to help represent the good work that's been happening to prepare for school. So with that, I'm going to turn the time to our superintendent to lead the answering of questions portion of this meeting. Thank you, Superintendent Madden.
Thanks, President Ford. So welcome to the Salt Lake City School District Town Hall. One note before we get started, we're trying a new translation service tonight, Microsoft Translator, and that will translate the meeting into the language of your choice. And we've sent out a code, and so that went out to all of our families, and people should be able to access it in whatever language they need. I've used Microsoft Translator app on my phone, and it worked pretty well. So we hope that allows some access to more people to participate in the meeting. I just want to note here that I know that there's a lot of interest from employees and teachers that have a lot of questions, but tonight we concentrated this on parent questions. And so, like President Ford said, we had a lot of questions. We did have almost 1,000 questions, and We're going to concentrate on the parent questions tonight, and then we're going to send out some information to teachers and administrators this week, and then we may come back around and have another meeting of this nature for them as well to answer any questions that they might have. We've tried to, we did have almost 1,000 questions, and what we tried to do was take those questions that came up the most and address them. And so while you may not hear your specific question, what we do hope is that you hear an answer that addresses your question. We'll also be posting a frequently asked questions page later on this week, and then we're going to maintain that moving forward. So you can keep sending questions, and we'll keep working on them. On one note, of course, and I think everyone knows this now, a work in progress. Things change from day to day. We have to always be ready to adapt to new information. So the answers that we're giving you tonight are based on our reopening plan and the best information that we have right now. There were quite a few questions about online learning, but I would note also that there were quite a few questions that were that related to when we do return. And so I just want to reiterate that we're looking to return. We're looking to be back in schools, and so we've got a lot of questions that address the nature of being back in schools as well. So let's jump right in. And I'm going to take a few questions. Then the format will be, I'll hand it over to some other folks along the way. And when I do, they'll introduce themselves. And then the members of the team that they have with them, they'll introduce. And then they will read the questions and have whatever person from their team that's the appropriate person for that question, then they'll answer that question. Okay? So here we go. First question I got here is this one here. How much time will be given before transitioning from all remote to the hybrid or all in-school model of learning? And so if numbers get low enough by the end of September, can we start in-person learning right away, or do we have to wait until the semester ends? And so part of our plan was to think about how we would come back. And what we've said is any change in delivery format. So as if we were to move from all remote into the hybrid model, we would do that at the end of a grading period. And so that would be a midterm or the end of a term. And the first midterm would come, I think, just right around the first part of October. I know Dr. Hall would know that answer more specifically, maybe Moselle too, but right around the first part of October would be the first opportunity for a midterm and a possible change. Next question. What are the metrics for return to school? And the metrics that I'm going to speak about here were the metrics that were approved by the board as part of our reopening plan. And that was a positive test percentage below 5% for a 7-day average, and daily cases per 100,000 less than 10. Right now, the test percentage is about 9.5 over the last 7 days, so it is down a little bit. And the daily cases per 100,000 was down to about 15. And when we started this conversation, it was about 17.5. That was only like a week and a half ago, so that changes fairly quickly. But those are the metrics that we are looking at. Where do I access the metrics? The easiest places to access these two metrics are, for the positive test percentage, you can go to the Salt Lake County Health Department COVID-19 data dashboard. And on that dashboard, you will find on page 4 the positive test percentage. And then if there's some sliders up on top, and if you leave the far right slider, that will be the most current date. And then you can take the other slider, slide it over to 7 days before that, and you'll get a 7-day average for positive test percentage. Then the easiest way to get the daily new cases per 100,000 is at COVID Act Now, COVIDACTNOW.org. And when you go to that website, in the search bar, it's very easy. You just type in Salt Lake County and hit return, and you will get that data. You'll get a variety of other data off there as well. Okay, next question. What's the main reason an option of in-person versus remote wasn't given for parents to decide? Other districts have done this. Why is Salt Lake City School District different? Currently, Salt Lake City is the only Utah city in orange or moderate risk as defined by the state, and that's the city itself, not the county. The current positivity rate, as we just talked about, is relatively high at 9.5. Schools that have returned successfully have generally been under 5, and actually many more of those have been under 3%, though we did set our number at 5. And the current, because of the current new cases, which again I mentioned was about 15. At a rate of 15 on the new cases per 100,000, what that actually translates to is it's an indicator of how much of the population we could expect to contract COVID over the next year. And with a number of 15, it would be somewhere in the 20 to 50% range of the population, of the entire population, that we would expect to become infected in the next year. That seemed very extreme to us. So the district based the remote learning decision on science and safety information available. We do meet weekly, and Board President Ford was there today. We do meet weekly with the Salt Lake County Health Department and the superintendents from other Salt Lake County districts, and we get updates weekly. So we're in the know. We know what everybody else is doing. They know what we're doing, and we know why people are making the choices that they're making. Okay, next question. When schools do reopen for in-person learning, what metrics will be used to determine if and when they will be closed again? This part's a little bit more complicated because, and I think President Ford knows about this after the meeting we were in today with the other districts. And the way that it works once a school is open is it works in conjunction with the Salt Lake County Health Department. And so it depends on lots of things. I mean, it depends on how many students are exposed in any particular situation, total number of students in a school. And so there may be instances where a portion of a school would be closed. Maybe we would send home some small group of kids, maybe a teacher to be quarantined. If there was a bigger exposure, then you may have a class, you may have a group of teachers. At some point, and I think this is something that would be through conversation with the health department, where you're going to hit some critical mass, and then the whole school would be put out on quarantine. So don't have a hard and fast answer for that, but that is the process. Next question. What happens if a student or teacher gets diagnosed with COVID? Will the school have to close? That's same answer as the one that we just gave. That would be on an individual kind of case by case. We would deal with that with the health department. Next question. My son needs time with a teacher to ask questions because I'm not as good as I used to be in math. How would this be achieved? Okay, we have expectations for our teachers, and like I said, we're going to be communicating with them this week. But we expect that all of our teachers will maintain regular office hours. And from a lot of the schedules that we've seen, teachers have office hours, they have help sessions, and we expect that you could also get quick response on email from teachers. We're in a digital world now. Things have changed, and we expect that you would get quick turnaround time on that. And I'll speak more to that in just a second. The next question I have is, how often should I expect communication from my son's teacher, and how will that happen? And I think a lot of that communication is going to come through email. There'll be communication through Canvas, and communication should be a regular occurrence. And teachers will maintain set office hours when parents and students can reach out with any questions that they have. And these should be communicated to you from the school. So this is something we can't communicate to you specifically, but your school will. And you should know when your students have synchronous learning. If your student has a class that starts at 8:30, you will know that ahead of time so that you'll know when they actually need to get to class. You should know when help sessions are. You should know when office hours are. And like I said, you should get that information from your school. If you're not getting that information from your school, call your school. If you're still not getting that information, you can call here at the district office to school leadership support and support. And we will connect with the school and make sure that you get that information. That concludes the questions that I had. So now I am going to turn it over to Dr. Sandra Buendia. She can introduce you to the people that she's brought here today, and then she's going to read the questions that pertain to her area. So Sandra, it's all yours.
Perfect. So I have today my team of 4 directors. I have Shelley Halverson, Director of Special Education. I have Emily Sutherland, Director of Social and Emotional Learning and Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. I have Dr. Berenice Gutierrez, who is the Director of Educational Equity and Access. And I have Mindy Holmdahl, who is the Director of Student Services and Counseling. So pretty excited to answer your questions. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Sandra Buendia. I am the Executive Director of Educational Equity and Student Support, and I have a lot of fabulous people on my team. So with that said, I'm going to pull up the questions real quick. And we're going to start with special education. So the question is, what is being done to help IEP and 504 students with their specific needs and support so that they don't get left behind?
All right, can you hear me okay? I just wanted to make sure I unmuted properly. All right, thank you. Well, we've been doing a variety of things to help and make sure that we don't leave our students with disabilities behind. That is of utmost importance to us. And so we have provided some summer instruction on a limited basis to some students with disabilities to support them in the skills that they may have lost during the springtime. We've also been given flexibility from the school board, which we greatly appreciate, to be able to bring in small groups of students with disabilities into buildings this fall during the online learning period to be able to provide special education services in person, in particular to our student populations that have great difficulty in accessing the online environment because of their disability. And we're looking forward to doing that. And you will be hearing from your child's special education provider in the next couple of weeks, next week or two, about that and having conversations with them about listening to lots of parent input on that. We've also worked really hard with the teaching and learning department and been given resources from the teaching and learning department to improve the online systems and apps and curriculum that we are using with our students with disabilities. And so we feel like those that continue to access the remote environment will have a much better experience this fall than what we had in the spring. And we've listened to a lot of parent input as we're getting ready to put the fall together and working to put it together. And so we've tried to take all of that into consideration, and we'll continue to consider your input into how we can support your student in making sure that their needs are met on an individual basis.
Next question. Thank you, Shelley. We have special needs kids and both parents work outside the home. These kids cannot succeed online without someone sitting right next to them 100% of the time.
That is a question. And you are not alone. Whoever asked this question, we have a lot of parents in that same situation. Our goal is to use this flexibility that has been given to us by the board to maximize the amount of time that we can provide in-person supports for our students with disabilities and be able to maintain all of the health and safety protocols that we will have in place for them while they are in our buildings. So we want to provide as much in-person instruction and support for the online learning environment that we can. And so we will be working with you to figure out what that schedule needs to look like and how we can best support your students. And we're also taking that on a student by student basis, and it will be driven by their IEP and the needs listed there. And so we will have a wide variety of options that we can provide to families to make sure that we're supporting your student and their unique needs.
Next question. How are children with IEP and speech therapy going to continue their sessions? Could speech therapy be 2 days a week instead of 1?
This is another really good question. We're considering all options at this point. So there will be some students who access speech therapy online and some students who access it in person, depending on the needs of the student and what we decide in IEP teams. If you feel like it's time to consider speech twice a week instead of 1, that is absolutely something you should reach out to your speech provider about, and that will most definitely be considered as we're planning for the fall.
How often will there be printable versions of assignments for kids with vision issues who need to limit screen time?
We can provide this accommodation as much as we need to. So if your child has an IEP or a 504 and they have those types of issues or concerns, and there could be issues outside of just vision issues that necessitate printed materials, we need to get those accommodations listed on the 504s and IEPs, and we can absolutely make that happen for your student.
My son is nonverbal and on the spectrum. He is on an IEP. Distance learning is very difficult for him. What will be his options for in-person learning?
So this is a situation that a lot of our students that are more severely impacted are in. And accessing the online environment is incredibly difficult in some of those situations. And so, like I've said previously, this is a high priority target population for us in bringing and maximizing their time in person with paraprofessionals or with a teacher in order to make sure they're able to access their education. So your child's teacher will be reaching out to you to make that plan and to make those schedules to get as many services as we can provided to your child as possible.
Thank you, Shelley. Those are the questions that I have related to special education. The next session is social and emotional learning, student services and counseling. And so I will identify who has provided a response, and then you can respond. I get the first one. So how much time is a 5-year-old expected to engage online? How will their social emotional needs be met via virtual learning? And I only answered this because of the social and emotional part, but I'm happy to invite Dr. Hall later to expand on the 5-year-old. So my response to that would be that we would expect reasonable engagement of a 5-year-old as we would in any other 5-year-old, and in that the school is going to set those parameters and have the flexibility to meet the specific needs of your child. Ultimately, that's our goal, is to really differentiate the way in which we support each and every one of our students. And so with regard to the social and emotional piece, we have counselors who will continue to provide social and emotional curriculum to groups of students, provide individual support when needed, and we have provided a lot of professional development to teachers specifically on social and emotional learning needs and engagement, welcoming routines. We have a lot in place to support those students' needs. Next question is, Mindy will be responding. Has there been any thought to how kids could interact for some kind of recess during the school day? The lack of less structured socialization time is taking a toll on the kids, and without it, makes it harder for them to focus on schoolwork when it is time to do that.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. We recommend that from the leaders when they have those moments for recess. Opportunities for less structured socialization time might be incorporated through use of a variety of activities such as morning meetings, class meetings, check-in circles, just so for students to connect with each other. Interaction with peers outside of remote learning is of course determined by the comfort level of the parents. But throughout the school day, it's definitely our goal for kids to feel connected to their classmates and find ways to interact academically and then also just socially.
The next question, I have both Mindy and Emily who responded in writing, so I will let you two decide how you want to address this. Has there been any thought to how the kids could interact for some, oh wait, it's the same, oh, somebody's been in the document, I shared it, I apologize, that question has been answered. What is the plan for school counselors, Mindy?
School counselors will provide crisis counseling, individual counseling, engagement support, social learning instruction, support with academic and social interventions, basic needs support, college and career support. We do our regular trainings for anti-bullying, anti-harassment training, community training, parent training, all of the things that counselors currently support in school settings, K through 12, will continue to support in a virtual format, connecting with kids, with their teachers, as in classes, and then separately in social emotional learning courses.
So Mindy, I feel like this next question you answered in the previous one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What form of socializing will you offer our children? Mental health is essential to our child's needs.
Yeah, definitely in the socialization, just like you said, our teachers have done a lot of Kagan training now. They know interactions with kids academically, but then also socially and emotionally. We have a second step curriculum that's incorporated through K-8 and high school classes. We have in our high schools, we have courses such as techniques for tough times. We have PXP advisory classes, and these are all courses where kids can emotional skills and be identified for additional services if counselors or if teachers are concerned that students might need some additional support from the school counselors. Teachers can make those referrals.
Okay, the next question is, there are many students who have struggles with this type of teaching. How will you cope with this anxiety?
We just really recommend that teachers let teachers know their concerns if they are worried about anxiety or any other social emotional mental health concern with their student. We can teach parents can request a one-on-one check-in with the teacher to identify possible support options. They can request support from the school counselor to practice calming exercises. Counselors are creating calming rooms. We also have telehealth options with Odyssey House. It's on our main web page. Parents can connect immediately, even before school starts, with therapists from Odyssey House, and those services are free. Between the school counselors, social workers, and our community resources, we have a lot of access for.
Thank you, Mindy. Emily, would you like to add? Oh, sorry. Emily, would you like to add any more to the social and emotional learning piece?
I think Mindy pretty much covered it. If people have other questions about social emotional learning, you're welcome to contact me or Mindy, and we can do our best to respond to any other questions.
Perfect. So I have a health question for you, Mindy. Once we are back in school, will I be informed if my own child is specifically exposed?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a protocol with the nurses that we'll be posting, and you'll be contacted by the health department potentially, and definitely the school nurse if there was an exposure in the classroom. And then you'll also be provided guidance in terms of next steps and quarantining, following up with your practitioner, and ultimately for parents to be come back to school.
Perfect. So the next and final section for our department is serving refugee students. We have a lot of questions asked about what happens when we have a newly resettled family come into our district. So Dr. Gutierrez will be responding to these. So question one is, how will we continue to enroll newly arrived resettled refugee students?
So absolutely. I work with the resettlement agencies, and they have already enrolled 3 families since we went into the closure in March. So our process is that the resettlement agency makes contact with me. They inform me that they have a new family that has moved into what they believe to be the Salt Lake City School District catchment area. They provide me with the family's address and their documentation packet. So then I confirm that the address does in fact belong to our district and what school the children would attend. Typically it's multiple schools because they tend to have children in elementary, middle, and high when they arrive. Once I know the schools, I contact them and I let them know that there is a new family coming in. I provide them with all the documentation. They process the majority of the registration digitally. If there is a need for them to have the family come in, then we work with Bob Munch, who coordinates translation as necessary to complete the family's enrollment. And then once the enrollment is completed, the teacher reaches out to the family to welcome them into their classroom. The other piece too is that we provide the technology and the hotspots and make sure that they're able to log in to their classes.
Next question, how will we support resettled refugee students during remote learning?
So there's multiple departments that coordinate and collaborate to support our resettled refugees. The Family and School Collaboration, in partnership with the Salt Lake City Educational Foundation, has been supporting refugee families with meeting their basic needs, and they will continue to do so. They'll continue to ensure that families have access to food and any other basic needs they might have. The Alternative Language Services out of Teaching and Learning has provided students with access to Imagine Learning so that they may be able to practice learning English. And finally, there will be opportunities to bring students in to school in small groups, very much keeping safety in mind, to support them in their English language acquisition.
And the last question for our department, and we thank you all for your patience as we answer all of these wonderful questions. How will we support parents with Canvas?
So the Office of Teaching and Learning is developing training for parents on utilizing Canvas. We will take the training and offer it in a translated manner and make it comprehensive for our refugee families. And again, we're collaborating with the resettlement agencies to figure out what's the best way to deliver this training to make sure that families are able to log on to Canvas and have their students take advantage of their education.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Buendia, there was a little trouble with Mindy's mic. And
Okay.
I don't know if we need to maybe get a repeat on some of that stuff, or because it was really hard to hear, and we got a few comments on the chat on YouTube Live that some folks couldn't hear that.
Were there any in particular? I can read the responses real quick.
I'm not sure about that. I got a text from someone about it, but I don't know details of it. Maybe
Okay.
just Mindy, Mindy, you know what the questions were. If you want to hit the highlights of those things that you spoke about, maybe we can touch on those real quickly again, if that's okay.
I can copy and paste the Mindy's answer.
Try again.
Now, so
Yeah.
Larry, can I have the document. So
Yeah.
let me try to go ahead and, because for some reason, can you all hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go through her responses, okay? So it's just going to take me a little bit. So in relation to, has there been any thought to how the kids could interact for some kind of recess during the school days, the lack of this? Oh, somebody's talking over me, sorry.
I'll mute him.
Okay. During the day, the lack of less structured socialization time is taking a toll on the kids, and without it makes it harder for them to focus on schoolwork when it is time to do that. Her response was, students should take breaks and step away from the computers for recess. Interaction with peers during this time will be left up to the comfort level of each family. Teachers will incorporate opportunities for students to connect remotely, utilizing a variety of activities such as morning meetings, class meetings, and check-in circles. The next question was, has there been any thought to how kids could, oh, that was when I saw that it had been repeated. What is the plan for school counselors? Counselors will provide crisis counseling, individual counseling, attendance, and engagement support, SEL instruction, support with academic and social interventions, basic needs support, college and career support, anti-bullying, anti-harassing training, community resources, and parent training. What form of socialization will you offer our children? Mental health is essential toward child's needs. Students will socially connect through engaging discussion opportunities connected to content via specific teaching of SEL skills and classroom and group check-in meetings. There are many students who have struggles with this type of teaching. How will you cope with this anxiety? Let the teacher know your concerns. Request a one-on-one check-in with the teacher to identify possible support options. Request support from the school counselor to practice calming exercises. Counselors are creating virtual calming rooms. We have telehealth options with Odyssey House where parents can refer their students, and the website, hopefully we can post that website. I don't want to read it off. Hopefully we can post it. Maybe I can send it to Melissa Ford and she can post it, or I can send it to somebody. I'll copy and paste that for you guys. So then in relation to health, once we are back in school, will I be informed of my own child if my own child is specifically exposed? The answer was yes. You will receive a notification from the school nurse and the health department. That was all of hers.
Thank you. That was helpful. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tiffany Hall. Tiffany Hall is the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. We're going to get a double dose of Tiffany tonight. We'll take part one right now.
Right. They wanted to break me up so that I didn't take too much time at once. I am so grateful to be here and to be able to represent teaching and learning. I would love to showcase the exceptional individuals that have worked since April to build a better understanding of what our new online and hybrid world would look like. Members of my team are experts in their content areas, and we have all had to buckle down and learn how to use all of the same tools and all of the same resources that we are asking teachers to use with your students. And it's been a real journey and a really exciting time for us to go from, a period where we're like, Teams, what's Teams, to, now it's like, oh, are we meeting in Teams or Zoom? And everybody is just with us. So we're really looking forward to some of the things that we have. I'm going to start this section with some of the questions that were around choice and online learning and the flexibility that we have around coming in and out of different models in the district. And then I'm going to talk about some of the programs and some specific questions about special programs we have in the district. Then I'll take a break, and after we talk about school schedules, we'll come back and talk more specifically about what the school day looks like. So several of the questions dealt with choice. If you opt to keep your child remote at the start of the school year and the pandemic situation improves, how easy will it be to transfer your child back into in-person learning? Or if I choose to stay online when school restarts, can I change my mind and come back in person later? And the answer to that is yes. We are going to be able to transfer back and forth from our online remote learning to a hybrid model. In fact, we're really trying to think very flexibly about, of course, the best case scenario is, we get a vaccine, everything's fine. But in the case that it doesn't, we're trying to think very flexibly about, do we come back in from remote to hybrid, hybrid to remote, remote to traditional, traditional to hybrid? And so we know that our classes are going to have to be able to flex through these, and then that we need to be able to find some ways to give parents choice. So what we have been doing, and the superintendent mentioned that the first break that we'll be looking for, is this a safe time to transfer back into a hybrid or traditional, is October 9th. And so because this is going to require us to move some personnel around as students come out of our schools and want to stay remote, then we're asking families to let us know that they'd like to stay by September 22nd. And then if we change at the quarter, we'll have a new decision date. And then if we're still looking forward, then at the midterm and at the quarter, we'll keep looking. And so we will be able to take students from where they are. One of the things that we've been working very hard to do that this over the summer is to work on pacing guides. And I said at our last board meeting, we will never ask our teachers to be on the same page at the same time, on the same day, at the same minute. But we will be within a week or two of everybody across the district as we stay on these pacing guides. So if a student is in the online school and then we go into an online or a remote learning, like we're starting the school year, and they decide to not go to hybrid when we go to hybrid, then the pacing there will be within a few days of where they left. If they choose to come back, then, and we do ask that you would consider doing that at one of these breaks at the midterm or the quarter, so that it's not all the way through, because we have to balance people in classrooms and different things like that. But we will be able to transition back and forth. I have another question about that, with whether or not if somebody is doing tradition later in the year and kids for whatever reason refuse to wear a mask and social distancing isn't happening, can I switch my daughter or son back to an online or a remote learning? So I want to say first that the district is going to follow and enforce all health department guidelines for face mask and social distancing requirements. That being said, if you've taught middle school, you know sometimes the best laid plans. So if a parent isn't comfortable having their child in the in-person learning environment, then they can stay in the remote model or they can switch back to the remote model. Again, we would prefer it at these breaks, but if it's a problem or something like this, we'll absolutely be able to talk to you about accommodating that. Another question about choice is, will high-risk children still be able to do the school district remote school? And the answer is yes. We have a plan to maintain remote learning as needed through the year. And that will, especially with our small children, our elementary kids, be an in-person experience. And so if those children choose to stay in that, the teacher may change, but the format and the pacing and the materials will not. During the first 2 weeks of school, which would be starting on August 25th and the first 9 days as we lead up to our September 9th start, schools are going to schedule meetings with teachers and families. We know that we need to prioritize making sure that those appointments allow for social distancing and maintaining that manageable and appropriate number of people in the building. But during this time, we're going to be doing some assessments. You'll have a chance to meet the teacher. You'll get some materials if there are things that you need to take home, different things like that. So that will be a good time for maybe that your child to get that idea that we do actually have a school and this is just one flexible part of what our education is going to look like. And then, as the superintendent has already said, during the year, teachers are going to have office hours so that you have a time to reach out to ask them questions or to set up another meeting. So the sum total of this is we have no idea what it's going to look like, but one of the things that we know, and this will come up again when we talk about instruction, is the ability to be flexible enough to make the right decision for your child and your family is very important to you, and we're going to work very hard to make that happen. I'd like to talk for just a minute about some of the programs that we offer in our district and whether or not there will be disruption in that. The first one is our dual language immersion Spanish program. And we have a dual language Spanish immersion program at Emerson and Mountain View Elementaries and at Glendale and Clayton Middle Schools, and those feed up into East and West High School at this time. And our state DLI program is providing a lot of guidance and support to all of the DLI programs and teachers. They're helping us understand how to balance the Spanish and English time and really work with teachers in the elementary schools, and then how to use some best practice strategies in our middle schools and high schools. So all of our DLI teachers will also attend 2 to 5 days of training online, but online training this year in dual language immersion best practices. So our dual language immersion programs will continue. Another question is how we're going to ensure that our district will be able to meet the needs of our gifted children despite the COVID. And then there's a follow-up question about our magnet program. So I'm going to kind of address both of those at the same time. Both our magnet and our neighborhood extended learning program are going to continue to provide services to students online. In our magnet programs, the 3 elementary schools that we have with magnet programs, those teachers will continue to provide their curriculum and meet the needs of those identified students in the program with depth and complexity, as they have always done. And our neighborhood ELP services will be provided for students in grades 4, 5, and 6. The neighborhood ELP teacher will continue to provide those program services online. Now, if a student is in our remote learning at the beginning of the year, and when we move to hybrid, if they choose to stay in remote, we will not be able to provide magnet services at in the remote once we switch back, because our magnet services occur at the magnet school. However, all of our magnet kids will be able to participate in the neighborhood extended learning program in grades 4, 5, and 6, because that will be online. And when you return to in-person schooling, whether that is the hybrid or we're back to traditional model, you will have the same placement as you have at this time. So some of those things a little bit different, but again, we're really trying to have flexibility, but also consistency in our programs. Just a few of the questions, and I would like to say how much I appreciate my colleagues in educational equity and student support being so thoughtful about how we are looking at the whole child and being able to respond to their emotional needs and anxiety needs as we teach. So we have just a few questions about grading and online learning. One of the questions was, will we use Zoom and other video conferencing as a part of remote instruction through the coming year? And the answer is yes, we are going to use Zoom, we're going to use Teams, and we have a lot of other online resources that are going to help us be able to make that teaching and learning more engaging, and also to make it easier to get through our Canvas course. And I'll talk some more about that a little bit later. Another question was about grading and how we will look at grading this year, and whether or not we're changing our expectations. We know that one of the things that happened last year were that many children were overwhelmed by the amount of work. And we've really done a lot of thinking about how that's assigned, what that looks like. And so our pacing guides will really help with that. But we have also prioritized our standards. And so our standards and topics are really, they have been, again, prioritized to ensure that we address the most important work of the grade so that students are ready for the next grade, and that we are also really mindful of the time for that 5-year-old that Dr. Mundio was talking about. Our grade scale will return to the traditional grade scale starting in the fall. During the sudden dismissal in spring 2020, districts and universities throughout the nation all adjusted their grades to provide students with some options to reflect the variety of ways that they were affected by the pandemic and that their families were affected. And our grade scale changed to reflect those practices that were also adopted by all of the other universities and districts in the state. One of the things that we did is that we gave a no grade option instead of an incomplete or an F grade if the student had not completed sufficient work to pass the class. We didn't issue an F grade. The no grade doesn't affect the GPA. The student, for instance, in high school still needs to complete that credit in order to graduate if it's a required credit. We did that simply because we knew a lot of people were dealing with the pandemic in a lot of ways, and we wanted to release some of the anxiety about being able to have some time to replace a class that they had not done as well as they could have done in. However, going forward in fall 2020, we're ready. So we will not have that option in fall, beginning in the fall. Also, our elementary teachers who did not have enough information about student performance could give a Q or an E if the student was interacting, but they didn't have enough data to assign a grade about grade level performance. And we asked them not to use the N or the 1 grade. And again, this will not be an option in fall 2020. We have some better systems for gathering assessments. All of those things we're hoping we have worked out. So our grading will return to its traditional standard scale. And we're going to do some assessments. So again, in the first 2 weeks, as we do these assessments, some of them we do need to do in person because of the way they are set up and the requirements of the state. And so if that is possible, we're asking schools to help us schedule appointments with teachers to do these assessments. Many of the assessments we have been able to work out some ways to do online. And we are hoping by the fall that we will follow specific guidance from the Utah State Board of Education about our summative state assessments if we're not back to in-person instruction. So we do have a plan for our formative assessments at the beginning of the year that will help us to make instructional choices for students. And then we will be watching and working with our State Department for those summative assessments that were canceled in the spring of 2020. And then a last question, what schools will be holding the ACT in September in Salt Lake City? That's been an ongoing issue between the ACT and our state and the health department and all of these other things. That is a contracted service that is scheduled at the schools. We don't schedule the ATC schedules to have it at our schools. So it's really best to check with the ACT about their scheduled dates and locations. And Superintendent, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, I'm going to hand it over to our business administrator, Alan Kearsley, and he's got a few people here with him today. Go ahead, Alan.
All right, with us here today, we have Kelly Orton, Director of Child Nutrition, Paul Schulte, Executive Director of Auxiliary Services, and Sam Quantz, Director of Information Technology. We'll get right into our questions. First question I will answer. The question is, will parents be paying school or class fees this year? So schools may elect to either charge an appropriate and approved fee this year, or they may elect to defer that later when we hopefully are back in person. But just know that if the fees are not spent according to the board approved fee schedule and spend plan, those fees will need to be refunded at the end of the year. Our next three questions will be answered by Kelly Orton, our Child Nutrition Director. First one is, we have free lunches for 2 students from Highland, but we don't have space in our fridges or freezers to keep 5 days worth of food. Do you think we could still be able to pick up food daily?
The answer to that is yes. We can arrange for parents to pick up their food on a daily basis upon request. We are going to have the standard delivery for meals of 5 days worth of meals or a week worth of meals, but we are setting up site-specific email addresses that will be published for each school kitchen to allow parents to communicate their concerns and make requests such as that. They may want to request, for example, to group all their meals at one site if they have children at various sites in the school district, pick it up at one location instead of all 3. So, or to receive a hot meal if they don't have the ability to cook their food, we'll make that available.
All right, next question. Is there going to be a school lunch program?
Yes, there is. We're going to continue to operate the free summer feeding program at our 13 school sites through the end of August. Unfortunately, the federal waiver we're using to do this program cannot be extended past August 31st. Therefore, we will revert back to the regular National School Lunch and School Breakfast program as of September 8th. And that means that students will need to qualify for their free and reduced meal benefits or pay for their meal. Again, it's important to understand that we are not raising the price of our school meals, even though the cost of the food and the packaging is more expensive for this year.
All right, and last question for you, Kelly. How will school meals be offered to students?
Okay, so during the school year, we will utilize federal waivers to allow parents to pick up basically a grocery bag full of food for a week to take home and prepare for lunch and breakfast for each day the child attends school online. Now, when we go to our hybrid program, when we return to that, we will continue to offer this take-home meal program to families, but we'll also implement sack lunches and sack breakfasts served at each school site.
All right, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
So this next question is for Paul. I am concerned about the air filtration systems once the kids go back to school, especially the older buildings like West.
Yes, hi everyone. That's a great question. We're currently evaluating all the schools and their mechanical systems. So this has been kind of a moving target with the recommendation from the ASHRAE Association. And so a week or so, 2 weeks ago, we were concentrating primarily on the ventilation and the airflow. Right now, with the recent recommendations, we have filters, and the way filters work, they have a range, and they're called MERVs, and we currently use MERV 8. The ASHRAE associations are recommending MERV 13. We have those ordered, and we are visiting each school right now to make sure that they hopefully can work with our systems. And so we're trying to include the MERV 13 filters, and then also those filters can impact, and relative to the CDC's recommendations, they can impact the outside air. So we're trying to find out what's the best way to implement MERV 13s and get as much airflow as we can. There may be some buildings where the 13s don't work, and we'll maximize whatever filter that we can use and also maximize the airflow.
Okay, thank you, Paul. These next set of questions are for Sam, our IT director. Will I be provided internet access and a computer for my child? Hold on, he's going to switch computers. Okay. Sam, do you just want to read the questions?
Yeah, I'll just read all the questions. All right, sorry about that. We've got my computer running the translation and everything else, and so it's having a moment. All right, so the first question is, again, will I be provided internet access and a computer for my child? Will every student get their own laptop or iPad? The short answer to that is yes. Just to kind of explain how we're going to go about that. If you haven't registered for school yet, please go to registration.slcschools.org and register your students. In the registration process, we have various questions about your remote learning options that you have at home and what devices you may need provided for you. Currently, we have about 13,000 devices that are ready to go out and about 1,500 iPads. That's not enough for every student on the first day of school. However, we do have about 6,000 more devices on order that are going to be coming in over time. Right now, we're just waiting for supply chains to fill our orders. So we're going to be using the data that we receive from registration to help meet the needs of those students who don't have FIRST with the devices that we have ready to go. In addition, we have about 600 hotspots, and we're working with partners, district partners, to provide additional internet access resources for all students. Each school is going to send out information to families about device distribution. In addition, at our 3 CLCs, between August 24th and September 3rd, we will have device checkout from 5 to 7 p.m. So that'll provide for those later hours of families that can't get in during the school day. After September 8th, we're going to have additional later hours, and we're working on the logistics of those at those CLCs as well. All right, the second question is, my daughter has a school computer checked out for the summer. When would we have to return the computer? Is there a way to get another computer for the fall? And how do we turn in books and laptops from last year? So we're asking every family who checked out a device last year who may still have it to bring it back in. We have reconfigured our devices to make it easier for students at home. So those devices actually operate more like a device operates inside the school. And we're hoping that that will eliminate some of the technological challenge that students had at home last year. You can drop those devices off at Liberty Community Learning Center on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4:30 p.m. If that time doesn't work, please work with your school administration or contact the IT department to schedule another time, and we'll provide that. If you have books, please return those to the school where they were checked out at. Right. Next question. How are you going to help students who have no access to computers, internet, vehicles to access internet hotspots? Again, we talked about that we have 600 hotspots available that'll be checked out. We'll be looking at that registration data very closely to determine how to distribute those. Those will also be recommended by the school administration. So obviously 600 devices isn't enough for one for every student or hotspots, that is. So we'll work with closely with school administration to determine those with the highest need. In addition, we are working with other partners in the city to help provide internet access to all of our students who might need it. Next question is, will teachers have the access to the technology they need? Absolutely. Again, we are currently distributing a number of teacher laptops right now, and we have many more on order. Those might not be in on the first day of school. However, we have ordered a number of web cameras that will be able to be placed on the teacher's desktop in their classroom and give them a fully functional synchronous environment. Next question is, are there any technological safeguards that would be put in place to help protect students from online predators, access to certain websites and apps, etc., or any that the school district IT teams can recommend for families to implement? So the first question is we are required by law to provide internet filtering on all devices on-site and off-site. So every device that we send home will have access to internet filtering. It's really important to remember that internet filtering is perfect. It is not perfect. So while the internet filtering will work on many of the known websites and inappropriate sites, it'll block those. There are new websites that come out every day, and it's really important to monitor what students are doing at home on those devices. If there's any questions about what your students are doing on those devices, please work with your school administration, and we can pull logs on what they've been looking at, or we can look at the device and see what happens. But for the most part, they are protected and filtered. In addition, we've got digital citizenship training that we have online for parents as well as students. It's important to go over that and show each one of us how to be responsible citizens in the digital environment. Next question is, when will parents be trained on how to use Canvas and how to successfully support our at-home schooling? So during the week of, or the weeks of August 25th through September 4th, those days, Canvas training, Power School training, other applications will be provided to parents in a number of ways. There will be online live sessions where parents can attend, and we'll have recorded sessions that will be available online. We'll have documentation that parents will be able to access. In addition, we're looking to have some quick start help guides that will be handed out as devices are distributed as well. And then the last question is, when is training for parents so we can plan our schedule and set up our house before school starts? Again, training will occur between August 25th and September 4th. The dates and times for these trainings will be coming in the near future, and they'll be coming from your schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Roberto Munoz. He's the Executive Director of School Leadership and Performance. He's going to read questions for school leadership. Except for that, I don't.
Good evening.
There we go. Okay.
Hi, good evening. I have most of my team here today. I'm Roberto Munoz, the Executive Director of School Leadership and Performance. With me today, I have Becky Pittum, who is our Highland Network Director. Becky, where are you? Finding on my screen? There you are. Chris Jesslin, our West Network Director. Thank you, Chris. Brian Connolly, our East Network Director. Missy Mackie Whiters, who is our Athletic Director and Title I Coordinator. And Teresa Umbaku, who is our Career and Technical Education Director. I'm going to start us off reading some questions. I have the first question and answer, and so let me pull that up, and I'll get us started. First question. Well, I have two questions, and they're very similar, so I'm going to combine them because they're worded differently, but they basically present the same scenario. So I'll read both questions, and then I'll just give a singular answer. First question. In the event students return face-to-face for certain days, can my high school student be on the same days as my elementary students? So this is a family with students in multiple grade levels going to different schools. The second question is very similar. It says, I have two children in different grades. In a hybrid model, if we are staggering days, I want some assurance that they will be scheduled for the same days and they don't get conflicting schedules. We are going to help facilitate this process when students enroll. There's going to be some options for them when they enroll to pick what days they would prefer. We're going to do our best to accommodate multiple student families. This, along with our students with special needs, are our highest priority. While we can't guarantee that this structure, we are confident that we can make it work for the overwhelming majority, if not all, of our families. And so I'm going to pass the mic to Becky Pinham for the next series of questions. Go ahead, Becky.
Thank you, Roberto, and I'm grateful to be here to help parents and help our community better understand our plans and to feel confident about what's going to be happening this fall with your children. My first question that I'll be answering today is, how will Wednesdays be structured? And will most scheduled sessions be in the mornings? Some of us working from home are trying to hire in-home care to help with virtual learning and trying to figure out general days and hours that we will need. Our Wednesdays are going to be a full structured day of work for our students and for our teachers. So you can plan on, as parents, your students having asynchronous assignments on Wednesdays for at least 4 hours. Those assignments, part of that may be that they'll be working with a teacher independently or even in a small group. Could be that they're working on ST Math or working on ALEC Math, or that they're joining a special group for a music class or an art class, but they will have structured work to do on Wednesdays. Roll will be taken on Wednesdays, and students will be accountable for that work. So the other thing you need to know is that all of those assignments will be on Canvas. So families will be able to choose when they do that Wednesday work. That's the flexibility that will come with making sure that we record our lessons and post them on Canvas. The next question that I want to address has to do with scheduling. What will a typical online school day look like for middle school or elementary? And wanted to say our online school day will be a virtual classroom with a certified teacher and peers, a combination of synchronous and asynchronous and independent activities and work, small group work, and at least once a week, those students will be able to join with their neighborhood peers in their classrooms to work together and online and be able to maintain those relationships. Also, the virtual work in our online classrooms will be content based. It will cover the core, everything that we're covering in our brick and mortar classrooms as well. Another question that has come up often is why it was that we, I'll just go ahead and read it if I can find it. There it is. I'm interested to know what the reasoning behind the AV day scheduling for elementary and middle is. Wouldn't an AABB schedule make more sense as far as containing virus outbreaks? One of the very first things we did as we were trying to determine what the right schedule would be for students was to make sure that we worked with our facilities people to know that those classrooms were going to be thoroughly cleaned and sanitized every day, and that they'll have that time at night to rest. And so we can be assured that every day those kids walk into a clean and sanitized classroom. Once that was established, then what we determined was it was going to be a better situation for our students to have a break between coming to class so that they could go back home, get some work done, come back and get that feedback from teachers. So there'd be a little bit of an opportunity for work in between rather than to go 5 days without seeing a teacher. We also determined that it was better for SEL, for our social and emotional learning of our students. This way they could break up those social interactions and see their friends a couple of times a week, a few days away from one another. I think what I'm going to do is jump to my last question. And this question has to do with how parents can help their students. Hello, I'm a bit confused. How are my kids going to learn while I'm at work and if they're at daycare? And the answer to that would be, this is why we're using Canvas as our common platform. All teachers will be recording their work. Their in-person, that face-to-face work on the computer will all be recorded, and assignments will all be recorded. So parents will have the flexibility of determining when their kids sit down and do that work. It may be that you have your help do a little bit of that work during the day, or that you choose to do the work at night with your students, or even on the weekend. And those are the questions that I've got to answer. And I'm going to pass that on to our next member of the school leadership and support team.
Okay, that would be me, Becky. Thank you. Chris Jesslin here, West Network Director. We've got a few questions to answer, and I'm going to jump in with the first two that are related. So I'm going to read them together and then provide a single answer. First question, how can we get a copy of our student schedules as most counselor meetings did not take place in the spring? Second question, when will we get information about the kids' daily schedules, when they are expected to be online? We desperately need this info to help us plan our work versus childcare time. So over the last number of weeks at our different school level meetings, both working with parents, teachers, staff, faculty, we've been working on the basic framework for schedules at each level of schools, so high school, middle school, and elementary. That framework is close to completion, and we should be able to have schools start completing their schedules for students within about the next week and a half. We're hoping by August 25th at the latest. The high schools and middle schools have already been building the course schedules for students, and they're getting close to completion on those. Next question I have, much of my child's learning at home will take place in the evening when I return from work. What systems do the schools have in place to support learning outside of school hours? Will lectures, instruction, and class meetings be recorded for later viewing? So we understand that online classes may need to be attended at different times to meet the needs of students and families. The best experience for kids would obviously be with their teacher so that the conversation and instruction is focused on student needs. However, we will provide instruction in a recorded format so that students and families can access the live lesson when needed. Additionally, all work will be outlined on a weekly schedule and available in Canvas. Final question I have, how often will students attend class? It's a great question. Class is in quotation marks, so we're talking about synchronous learning opportunities for kids. This is going to be widely dependent on the school level of your kids. It will also depend in many places on the school itself. There will be synchronous learning opportunities for students throughout the week. And again, that might look different from school to school and certainly from level to level. Thank you. I'll turn the time over to Brian Conley.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. Brian Conley, East Network Director. Most of my questions are focused around high school, the upcoming high school experience. And so most of our questions came in when people saw the schedule coming out and condense it down here into a few questions like, Why only 4 classes in high school per day? How will the 4 classes per term work? Per term, by that we mean quarter. And will 2 terms be compressed into 1, or will they just get half the curriculum? So first of all, the 4 classes in high school, I shouldn't say most, many of our students struggled to navigate 8 classes remotely when we went out in the spring. This was one of the repeated complaints and concerns we heard from students, from parents, also from teachers. And typically a student was able to focus well and stay caught up and really do the work on 3 to 5 of their classes. But inevitably, most of our students had 1 or 2 or 3 classes that were largely ignored. We think students and teachers, after working with our team that was on that scheduled committee, we think students and teachers focusing on fewer classes will result in more learning and rigor. Teachers also will be able to be focused on roughly half the students they typically serve at any given time. We think that gives them the opportunity to offer a more successful experience for our students. And by the end of the first semester, students will have completed 8 courses, 8 semester courses. It won't be half the curriculum. It'll be 8 semester courses when January hits, just as they would have in the traditional setting. Another question is about AP and IB classes, advanced placement and international baccalaureate classes. We are currently working with principals to get some of the teachers of these courses to offer maintenance and review times during the quarter that a student does not have that class every day. If they have the class in the second quarter, then to be able to do some work on it in the first quarter, or vice versa. At the end of the first semester, most of our AP and IB students will actually have had more opportunities in that content area to learn and then review compared to the traditional model. Students will also have access to Canvas materials. We're working to make it so students have access to all their AP and IB class content all year long. So instruction does not necessarily vanish during the term when the classes don't meet. The instruction is just asynchronous at that time in their off quarter. Last question that I had is one about person wrote, I wanted my daughter to take just the classes she needs to graduate. So if your daughter is a freshman, sophomore, junior, we want all of our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors to have a full schedule. And that's what we're building our schedules around. If she is a senior, please have her contact the counselor or her school counselor, and we're going to make things work, and we're going to work with people for our seniors that we need to make things work individually for. Going to turn over time now to Teresa Mbaku.
Salt Lake City School District. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to a few concerns of our patrons in regards to the CTE program in our district. CTE is more important than ever in today's rapidly changing world. As we look ahead to the economic aftermath of COVID-19, there will be significant demands on learners of all ages for fast but quality upskilling and reskilling programs that result in careers with family-sustaining wages. This requires CTE programs, especially at the secondary level, programs that are nimble and proactive. So as I reviewed the questions of our patrons, I would like to share 2 that seem to be on the forefront of the minds of students and parents. Question 1, will there be tech classes at the Career and Technical Center? Yes, we are still offering the full menu of CTE classes as scheduled last spring. It will look different for at least the first term, with all classes being taught by the CTC teachers in the virtual platform. The CTC, Career and Technical Center, offers specialized classes and programs that are not offered at our 3 traditional high schools. These classes are more expensive to run, and they quite often have an industry certification attached as a capstone. We will begin these classes in the virtual platform and we are planning for transition to the hybrid model. The teachers at the Career and Technical Center have been planning for both modes of instruction to assure a smooth transition when needed. The CTC teachers are developing novel approaches to online learning, such as our nursing instructors. They're creating videos of themselves giving dolls baths to demonstrate the bed bathing techniques. In some situations, there may be small groups of students, 4 to 6 students, such as in the welding program, which is a CTC course, but it's housed at Highland High School. In either platform, the CTC teachers are ready with exciting, engaging, and appropriate instruction and assessment, all in a safe environment. The second question, will there be CTE driver's education fees for the first term? For the first term that we're in virtual learning, the general CTE fees will not be assessed. There are a few exceptions. Our nursing program, emergency medical technician, driver's education, these programs do have regular fees that are assessed to the students or a fee waiver if necessary. Some of these exceptional fees include fees that are paid directly to a vendor. For example, a student in the nursing program may want their own stethoscope, and that will be a fee that will be assessed to the student. Another example will be a fee that is required for immunizations before a student can enter a medical facility to complete their clinicals. So students in the nursing program are also assessed a fee to sit for the national or state medical assistant or certified nursing assistant exam. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else, Roberto?
Mic off. Okay, sorry, Larry. I couldn't get my mic off. Hi, I'm Missy. I'm Mackie Whiters. I'm the athletic director and also coordinator of Salt Lake schools for the Title I. And I just have a couple of quick things, and there are questions that have been directed to me. And one of them, I'm sure, is on mind of a lot of people who are athletics supporters. The Pac-12 canceled all their sports, fall sports, because of the health recommendations by their top authorities. And what does that mean for our district? Right now, we are following the guidelines of the governor's color code phases that our local board of health and the UHSAA. And I just want everybody to realize and remember that our coaches and our athletes are our first priority. And changes can be made as needed as we go along during this time. The other thing is questions about during practices and during games. What are the district's guidelines for high school athletes playing fall sports? Are masks required? Are social distancing rules and crowd limits enforced at games and tournaments? And will athletes be required to ride events with teams on buses? Masks are required to be worn to and from. We ask that the participants also wear their masks on the sidelines when they're not participating, and they do social practice physical distancing. We also encourage, it's not, we don't require that they wear a mask during practice or a game if that is their personal choice. Paul Schulte's group has been very, very good in making sure that our facilities and our fields are cleaned and our coaches have the proper equipment, and the COVID protocol that we have, hand sanitizer and sanitizing in between workouts. Also, we will not be playing any home games this fall. All games will be away. They're also limited to only 50 participants on the field for football, 25 for all the other sports. The one big question is, are students required to ride the bus to activities? Yes, they are. This is due to liability as defined through our risk management. And buses will be sanitized. There's only going to be one student per seat. Masks are to be worn. Roll will be taken. Hand sanitizer used upon entry and leaving the bus. If you have any questions, feel free to give me shoot me an email and I'll be happy to speak with anybody.
Superintendent Manning, that concludes our department questions. Turn it back over to you.
Thank you. There's going to be, we were originally set up just to go to 8. There's might be a few people that are going to drop off now. Thank you to those of you that do leave. We appreciate you answering those questions. Very helpful. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Hall.
Thank you, Superintendent. I am going to be brief, but I'd like to thank School Leadership and Performance for going through the schedules. We had just a few questions about additional flexibility. What plans do you have to make things more flexible for students and parents that are having to try and figure out how to balance working full-time and helping their children attend online classes, or maybe students that will be in daycare during the day and you're helping them in the weekend or over the weekend or in the evenings? And we understand that online classes may need to be attended at different times to meet the needs of students and families. Now, the best experience is going to be with the teacher, so the conversation and instruction is focused on student needs. But we are going to provide the instruction in a recorded format so that students and families can access that when needed. And we're going to have all work outlined on a weekly schedule that will also be available in Canvas, and that we are going to record those lessons and teaching for students so that if they miss a session or if they need to view it again, they're going to be able to go back and have that as a resource. Now, there are a few parts, such as some small group work, that we may not be able to record, but the main part of the instruction, what the teacher is presenting to the class, that part is the part that we are going to be posting. There was a question earlier about whether or not, as we do all of this in Canvas, that we'd have some paper. And my colleague Shelley Halverston addressed that. And I just want to say that we are aware that many students need that as an accommodation. And so we are working to figure out what things, if that is a need that you have, do need to be assigned as paper. But we are really moving over into online and have purchased some resources to support that. Now, as we think about being flexible and having online classes that are synchronous with the teacher in front of the students and with a camera, and also asynchronous where they're working independently, the question has come up about attendance. And attendance is a very important legal part of what we do as a school district. So to comply with federal and state attendance guidelines, our proposed learner validated enrollment plan is to track attendance at live or synchronous sessions and during independent or asynchronous work during the Wednesday online sessions. And here's how. Students will be expected to read or to attend and respond to the classroom instruction, as well as completed signed work. So students might have an exit ticket or a Canvas discussion board item that is completed at the end of the session to demonstrate the understanding of that day's learning. Now, if a student is watching a recorded class at a later time, they'll also be able to complete that exit assignment. And then that will record in Canvas for that day. So teachers will be able to record on Wednesdays for the live instruction days. So, sorry, I'm drawing with my hands, you can't see that. On Wednesdays, they'll record attendance for Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday's live instruction. And then we'll have assigned work for the Wednesday digital day, as Ms. Pittum described earlier, and that will, the completion of that work will be tracking for the Wednesday attendance. We will have but parents, you as a parent or a guardian will be able to review attendance in the parent portal through PowerSchool, and will also be able to observe your students' daily activity in Canvas. So what we're hoping to do with this is build that flexibility so that if families have their children there for the school day in the morning, or as it happens, then we'll take attendance that way. But if you need to flex that in another way, we'll still be able to take that attendance and account for the fact that you've had the learning for the day as it occurred. We've had a few questions, again, about what support and training teachers have received to prepare them to be ready to use these online tools. And I spoke about this at our last board meeting at some length. So the short version is, again, we've purchased some online tools to help teachers be able to conduct more engaged online learning. We have Zoom and very shortly Teams that will both have opportunities for students to learn as a class and then have that small group interaction with their peers, work individually and then come back to the big class. We have purchased some very engaging curriculum materials for science instruction, high quality math instruction, for online resources that can be used through ELA and social studies. All of these things are focused on making grade appropriate decisions to move students forward on those priority standards. I'd also really like to shout out and thank our academic coaches from all of our content areas and also our help desk through our information technology. Both of those groups have worked so hard to support teachers as we begin a year online. We also are very lucky in this district to have fully certified librarians in every one of our schools. And those three groups of people, our academic coaches, our IT, and our librarians, are going to be available to help support teachers through this transition into online learning. I'd also like to thank Sam Quantz for bringing up the digital literacy. Also know that your students will be receiving those digital literacy lessons through their library instruction time. Two quick questions about big classes. How will secondary concert band or choir classes work over distance learning? I'm so grateful for Adam Eskelson and the work that he's done with all of our fine arts teachers. So in our secondary schools, students in large group music courses are going to practice online with a teacher. Now this may happen in small groups with line voicings, like altos and trumpets together, so that the teacher can hear and coach those lank groups online. They may also do some small groups or other sectionals, such as an SATB or maybe the WINS. And then as we're able to have small groups of students back in the building, we'll start to have students scheduled to come in and work in the classroom in those small groups with the teacher. And then my colleague Teresa Mbaku has already talked about some of those hands-on classes like woodworking and welding, many of our CTE classes, foods. So students will participate in online classes at first with models and demonstrations from the teachers. They'll also begin working on state assessments or classroom learning that supports the class, such as the safety training that very often is required before they do any of the hands-on piece. But all of these programs will also be under the advisement of the CTE Advisory and Steering Committee with all of their industry partners, parents, students, and teachers, and they will be working together to find some innovative solutions to how we can work through those online classes. And again, as we're able to bring small groups back into the classroom, we'll be able to reach out to those students and have them come in and do some of that hands-on. And our last and dearest to my heart, most important hands-on thing, how will students be able to check out library books? So our students in Salt Lake City School District are very lucky to have access to an exceptional collection of online library books through our Sora app, which can be used on a computer, a tablet, or a phone. We're also a partner with the Salt Lake Libraries through the Sora app, so students can access K-12 resources, fiction, nonfiction. We've done a wonderful job. Katie Iramia, our library coordinator, has worked with librarians to really develop a nice, diverse reading collection for our students to check out online. Some people, there's no excuse not to have a book in their hand. That's the way you want to read. So we're working with risk management. I'd like to thank Paul Schulte to help us determine again when we can move those small groups into the library to begin to do some safe checkout. And when books are returned, we'll follow all of the safety protocols for quarantining those books as outlined by the American Library Association. So we hope to be able to start checking out books from our wonderful libraries as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hull. I'm going to turn it over to Moselle Orton, who is the Executive Director of Human Resources. Moselle?
Hi. I would also like to introduce two of my fabulous teammates, Logan Hall and Carrie Gardner. As a group for Human Resources and for employee questions, we've received many questions that are similar in nature and are clumped into some groups. So we may not actually answer each individual question. I want to also express how grateful we are to have this opportunity to address some of these generalities. Many of our employment questions are so individualized and unique to each employee that we will take those questions from the employee personally and do so in a private setting. One of the questions that we received was in regard to why remote. And so I just wanted to make a statement, and this question I will read specifically. During the initial all remote learning time, will teachers have the flexibility to meet with small groups of students or one-on-one with students if both parties feel comfortable? So the board, our school board, based on science and safety information that is currently available, made the determination that the district will utilize a remote learning modality to begin school, and there are very few exceptions to that. As we continue to analyze and research ongoing scientific and safety data, another decision might be made in the future. But until that time, students will be provided their educational experience in the remote modality with, as I said, those few exceptions. We also received questions around evaluation processes and accountability, reporting any kind of outbreak or contagion, and school closures, school calendar, and employment benefits. And so I will turn the time over to Logan Hall, who is our Human Resource Services expert in evaluative processes for our staff, and have him address the evaluation procedure. Logan?
Hello, thank you for this opportunity. The question that I would like to address is how we will hold teachers accountable for quality teaching, and how you can assure that we don't have a repeat of last spring, which several teachers merely made assignments and didn't teach. I'd like to say that's very few and far between, but specifically just this last week, our administrators, received training on how to conduct observations in a remote learning environment, as well as how to effectively hold collaborative conversations with their teachers online. So principals and assistant principals have received training on those things, and additionally, they will have access to join classrooms remotely through Teams or through our Zoom platforms. As well, the principals also have access to each of their teachers' Canvas courses, so they can monitor the assignments being given to students, have conversations with the teachers about what materials are being delivered and how that's working for their students. So in short, principals are monitoring teacher performance, making sure that they're staying current with the core curriculum, and they're moving forward with observations as we would as if we were in the brick and mortar building. So thank you very much. I'll turn this time over to my colleague, Ms. Carrie Gardner.
Thank you, Logan. And thank you for having me here. I would like to quickly and briefly, for time-sensitive reasons, address the COVID-19 related situations and how we will track, report, and collaborate on those situations. So we do have a highly collaborative, highly confidential process with some established personnel from Human Resource Services, as well as our lead nurse and our school nurses, and 3 full-time designated representatives from the Salt Lake County Health Department. So as a situation arises, whether it's with a student, a family member of a student, or an employee, we will gather information confidentially. We will report that information to the health department. They will advise on self-quarantine, self-isolation, self-monitoring, and return to school, return to work. They will also be available through their own resources for families who have a designation or a sense of high risk within their family, and they will provide additional direction to those people as well. We do meet weekly with the health department. We've just started that process, and we will continue to follow their guidance, their manual, and should the situation change and a school closure need to occur, that would be in collaboration with the health department to guide us to ensure that we are doing that safely and effectively. And the Human Resource Services team is happy to answer any additional questions, as well as our head nurse, Judy. So we're happy to help you on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to turn it quickly over. You're not done.
I just had a
Go
couple
ahead.
more.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So one of the questions we had was regarding how any changes in our start date would affect the school calendars and terms for the rest of the year. And we are working on how to balance those quarters and semesters. And we should have responses in about a week out to our public and our parents. We also want to be sure that you know that as Human Resource Services, we are very committed to following and providing any benefits or employment interventions that we can provide. Please don't hesitate to contact Loretta Brazelton if you have any questions regarding any concerns, health-related concerns, leave options, or any benefits that you might have questions about. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, Moselle. I'm going to turn it over to James Yapius, and James is the director of the Salt Lake Education Foundation.
Well, I'm just going to be brief. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank all the different directors. I think the role of the foundation is really to work and support the needs of our students and families. And at every level, I believe that we have been able to really work in partnership with the different departments, and we will continue to do that. What's most important during this COVID-19 pandemic is for us to address the needs of food insecurity and also work with Sam and the different departments to address the digital gap, the make sure that our students are connected, and also working to make sure that the students have the computer and the technology for them to be able to do their work. As far as the after-school program, we have launched our virtual program, and the question was, a parent asked, right now I have reduced work schedule, so I don't need to utilize the after-school care. I did not sign up for the program. However, once I go back to work, I will be needing this as one of the options. I'm glad to report to you that we will make sure that we do not have any waiting list, and we will provide parents with the support necessary. The superintendent and I have been in conversations with a number of city partners with the mayor's office, and I mentioned that before, to extend different opportunities, not only through the mayor's office, the Youth City program, but also through the Boys and Girls Club, to be able to give parents options, and so parents will have an opportunity to place their students in those programs along with our after-school program. So our biggest, I can say to you, the partnership is really critical. Other than that, all I can say is that we're here to support and really facilitate any gaps that maybe our district is in need, and most importantly, our students.
Thank you, James. Finally, I'm going to turn it over.
Can I interrupt real quick? Can we introduce Liz Gonzalez, who is the supervisor of community ed and the after-school program?
James, you want to do that?
Yeah, Liz Gonzalez, I thought she was not on the call anymore, but yes, Liz Gonzalez is the new supervisor for the after-school program, and she oversees the program. So there she is. Thank you.
Thanks. Then finally, I want to turn it over to Yandri Chatwin, the Executive Director of Communications and Community Relations. Yandri?
Hi, I am excited to have a moment to answer a couple of questions, and I will be brief because I know we're running a little short on time. But one question that we got is why only one day a week in high school when we return? This is referring to the hybrid model when we are able to bring some students back into the classroom. High schoolers will be attending one day a week and they'll be remote the rest of the time. The question is, and really important one. And the reason is that one of the safety precautions that parents told us was most important to them in our plan to bring kids back into the classroom was the ability to social distance. Because of our large classroom sizes and especially our large student populations at our high schools, in order to be able to properly social distance, we're going to have to divide students into 4 cohorts. Each cohort will attend one day per week, and that's what's going to allow us to have small enough numbers to safely social distance. Again, we want to bring students back into the classroom, but we want to make sure we're doing it safely. The next question I have is, how will the district communicate with me? How will I know what's going on and when status changes? That is a great question. The main resource that parents need to know about is our website. That's slcschools.org. And the reason we use our website so much is because there's an ability on the website to select the language in which you want to get the information. In the Salt Lake City School District, our families speak more than 80 languages. We want to be mindful of that and make sure that we're getting information as broadly as possible in the language that makes sense for families. So if you ever have a question or aren't sure about something, our website is the first place to check. We also will make sure that we send you important updates through email, text message and voicemail. And so as you're registering your students for this year, it's really important that you make sure your contact information is correct so we know how to reach you, and that you also opt in proactively to receiving district text messages. Unfortunately, just giving us your number doesn't suffice. You actually have to proactively opt in for those messages if you want to be able to receive them. And to do that, for parents who are listening now, you can text the letter Y or the word yes to 67587, and that will opt you into receiving our text messages. We also, of course, use social media broadly, and we have two other resources for parents who have questions. We have an email inbox that gets checked by staff. It's news@slcschools.org. Again, news, NEWS, @slcschools.org. And we also have a district hotline, 801-301-6476. And the hotline is answered during business hours. And if a person isn't able to get the phone, they'll respond to you within by the next business day. So again, that number is 801-301-6476. And that concludes my question.
Okay, thank you, Yandri. So I guess just one last thing. I want to thank all the people that participated tonight. I want to thank everybody that tuned in on YouTube Live to watch the questions. I want to thank all the people that presented tonight. I think you're an impressive group of creative problem solvers. And I know that this group that we have here tonight, they represent the district, but there's a lot of other people out there that are doing a lot of hard work getting ready for school. We've got lots and lots of teachers that have been working on their own time. They're not under contract right now to get ready for fall, make sure we do the best job that we possibly can. And I think the passion that they bring is gonna help us be really successful. So thanks to everybody. Keep wearing masks, social distance, and stay home if you don't feel well. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to President Ford. We are done with our part.
Thank you so much. I would just echo what a superintendent said. Thank you so much to all who participated tonight. We've heard from 24 different people. Very hard to answer these questions. I appreciate the time that you've spent to do it. It's important. And then I would also say thank you to all of those who've been working equally hard but didn't present tonight. Our principals, our teachers. We have lots of employees that are working very hard in our buildings, on our grounds, in many different ways to support our students. And we're grateful for that work. We are also sure that you have more questions. So continue to ask, continue to push us, hold us accountable. We really do mean it. We want to be held accountable to our vision statement, which is excellence and equity for every student in every classroom every day. And even though our classrooms at the moment will look a little different, we still want to be held accountable to serve your children. That they're important to us. So thank you for participating, and we will adjourn the meeting. Thanks for joining us.